and welcome to Talk to Downtown. My name is Courtney Wood. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Downtown Stockton Alliance, the 501c6 nonprofit property-based business improvement district serving downtown Stockton. This series is intended to connect our business owners, property owners, visitors, and residents with the organizations, people, and resources which impact our community. Today we have special guest Tony Mannor. He's the Public Information Officer for the City Manager's Office at the City of Stockton. I'm excited to chat with him today. We'll begin by having Tony share a little bit about his background and how he became the PIO. Then I'll go through a list of questions I've outlined for him, and at the end, we will open it up for viewer questions. So if you do have a question or comment, please type it in, and we will get to it towards the end of the live. With that, welcome, Tony. Thanks so much for being our guest today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you became the Public Information Officer.
Sure. I was born in Stockton, right here in the county hospital. I don't want to say what year, but my kids say the 1900s. I've lived here my whole life, and I think like many kids in Stockton, your first thought is, I want to grow up and leave. I want to go find adventure somewhere else, and I was the same way. I thought my path was through Silicon Valley. I was really into technology, and I saw that as my career path, but something kind of shifted along the way. The more time I spent in Stockton and the more I started becoming involved through volunteering and working and starting businesses and things like that, the more I started to meet people and travel around the country. I started to see what people were doing in Stockton. I started interacting with a lot of small business owners and saw them investing and what that was doing for their families. And it changed my perspective on what Stockton was. It wasn't, you grow up in your neighborhood and you think the whole world looks like that. And I realized that Stockton wasn't like this little town that was, in my youthful hubris that, holding me back from great things. Turns out that Stockton was someplace where anybody, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, how much money you have, can grow something and make it your own, And that's kind of when I fell in love with Stockton. It was no longer just the place where I lived. It's kind of where I started to establish roots, and I started feeling a little bit more connected to the city. And I started seeing potential everywhere, especially when I was traveling and then coming back to Stockton. And so instead of having my sights, over the hill into the Bay Area, I started building here in Stockton. I've owned and operated several successful companies, ran a couple hospitality businesses, one of them right here in downtown Stockton, which led to more, eventually became, one of my businesses was regularly acknowledged as the biggest nighttime live music venue in town. I ran the very first drive-through coffee shop in Stockton was one of mine. Bunch of things like that. And then eventually, as I got older and more developed and focused on my career, I ended up working at a national brand development and public relations agency until I got promoted and ended up taking that company over and working with billion-dollar brands and watching all this success go on around me. I started thinking about myself as a kid, and I started seeing, especially after I had kids, I started seeing other kids that I started seeing myself in. And so I ended up starting volunteering and mentoring with organizations like Stockton Scholars or the YMCA, trying to provide mentorship. And that's one of the things that I benefited from was I had mentors in my life that gave me access to information that I didn't have growing up. So I wanted to be that person for the next generation. So, but the more I get involved, the more I develop into what this city ecosystem looks like. Every chapter of my life, it really came down to the same thing, just trying to do my part and help other people see Stockton the way that I see Stockton. And that's kind of what brings me here today. As a public information officer, I get to tell Stockton's story. I get to make sure residents know what's happening in their city, and I get to make sure the rest of the world sees Stockton the way that I see Stockton.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Tony, for giving us a little bit about your background. And for anyone who doesn't know, Tony used to own Finnegan, so very, very popular spot here in Stockton. And I myself was a patron many times, so really, really cool. Really cool to have this conversation right now. Can you tell anyone watching what exactly is a public information officer, for the city of Stockton, and what does your role involve?
The easiest way to explain it is when media, when the news, they need information, when residents have questions. I'm the person that communicates on behalf of the city manager who oversees the city of Stockton. So I think people would be surprised to know like how many times I get phone calls just from residents that want to know if they can get sandbags because it's raining. So it'll be everything from that to dealing with national news agencies calling in and getting confirmation on data for stories that they're running about Stockton, things of that nature. Excuse me. But it's more than just talking to reporters. My responsibilities is to really effectively oversee all public-facing communications for the city. So if that's press releases or social media, the city website, newsletters, video content. I'm also responsible for the city's public access channel, which is Channel 97, and manage the communications and transmission technology that brings city council meetings into the homes of Stockton residents. So there's all these overlapping skill sets that are required in order to make sure the public's aware of what the city is doing. I think the thing that people would find the most, maybe I find the most interesting, is that I also lead the city's digital accessibility, ADA accessibility implementation. So when you're making sure things like the city's website, the social media accounts, digital tools, they're all in line with federal ADA regulations, so that you're doing the right thing in making sure that anybody and everybody can access the information, because this government belongs to all of them, right? So whether you're visually impaired or you're hearing impaired, you still have the same level of access. And that doesn't just go for people with disabilities, it also goes for people who speak a different language. They have to be able to open up a business or access, they're part of the community too. So accessibility design means also language cohesion. So I also provide technical training to our communication coordinators and all the different departments of the city to make sure everybody's in alignment and consistent and effective in how we reach the public. I think when I talk to people, the part of the job that they're most surprised about is that there's a significant emergency management component for this position. I'm CS certified, and I serve as the PIO for the Emergency Operations Center during disasters and major incidents. When something happens, like a fire or a flood or some sort of public safety situation, I'm in what they call the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, coordinating information that goes out to keep people informed and safe. That means working with our Office of Emergency Services, liaising with county, state, and federal agencies, and making sure that the public gets accurate information in case of fire, flood, tornadoes, things of that where any delay in that information getting out could cost lives. So that's a responsibility I take seriously as well. I also do a lot of community outreach on behalf of the city and city manager's office. I get out into the neighborhoods, attend events, making sure we're not just broadcasting information, but actually listening to what the residents need. And with our new city manager, we're also exploring new ways to connect with the public. So we're looking at podcast, storytelling content, real two-way communication with residents instead of just being like an information hose, just throwing everything out there. We want to hear what public wants to know about, so that we're giving them something that they're asking for. Now, as far as how did I get the job, the PIO is reports to the city manager's office. It's an appointment through a competitive hiring process. So I think part of the reason or the way I was selected was I bring an equal amount of communications and technology experience. I spent years running a national public relations firm, managing billion-dollar clients. I feel like I've said that 100 times now, but in that time, I've built national brand and communication strategies for these clients, these customers. And then also I spent years building software in web development and web applications, leading tech and web and software development teams. And, I'm not going to say I'm a unicorn, but but the combination of a person that does both the creative and the strategic and being able to, be on camera is kind of rare. So I think, it's not just, writing press releases. It's understanding how information flows through digital systems. It's how to reach people where they are, how to use today's communication tools and technology, how to build the infrastructure that makes transparent governance possible. So it's kind of unique. Sorry, I'm in my office and I'm hearing traffic go by, and every once in a while. Honestly, it doesn't hurt that I'm okay with being out in public and speaking to people about the things that are going on. That in a previous career with another government agency, I was the person they would hand a microphone to if they needed to kill 5 minutes. Talk for 5 minutes, keep everybody entertained until we start this. So that's also a skill. So
Yeah.
It is what it is, but it's a normal Wednesday for me.
So you were kind of tapped for this position because of all of these skills you have that kind of merged together perfectly into what this position needed. Can you tell us about the new OPTIC department at the city, and how does that tie into your role?
Sure. So OPTIC, for those who don't know, stands for the Office of Public Transparency, Information, and Communication, which, government loves a good acronym. But it's a team of people, 3 people inside the city manager's office, and they're responsible for creating the content that's telling the public what's happening inside the city. The city's always done a really good job at collecting data and reports, updates on projects and programs. But there was direction by council last year that we needed to direct more attention to getting the information to the public. Collecting information isn't the same as communicating it. And residents shouldn't have to dig through government documents and websites and stuff to find the stuff that's happening in their city. So the vision was to make information more digestible, to make it accessible, to make it more available to people in a way that they can consume it and understand it and act on it. So it's in taking a step back, sort of a bigger picture thing. Most cities the size of Stockton will have 2 different departments. They'll have a communications department, and then they'll have their public information office. So it was also about modernizing the way the city of Stockton communicates. And while we don't have the money of a lot of cities that even our size or bigger, that's why it was so important to find people with overlapping skill sets, because this was something that was important to council, but we didn't really have the money to create this whole communications department. We had to kind of utilize the assets and the resources that we had. So now, so the way it works is that according to our city charter, the city manager sets the direction on our communications plan. That's his responsibility. Then he turns over, says, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to approach it. Then he turns it over to me and it's like, now it's your job to make that happen, to realize that goal. So it's my responsibility to implement that plan. The 3 people that are on the OPTIC team, they create the content, they implement the pieces of the plan, they create the video, the graphics, the social media, the newsletters, they perform the storytelling. So they're given direction, they're creating all those elements, and then we execute that strategy. So they're the team that turns the strategy into the things that the public actually sees. We've also, OPTIC has also been working on the transparency part of it. So we have a member of our team. She is an expert on accessibility design. So she has gone through all of our social media, all of the websites, everything, to find how to make it more accessible, how to make it more available to the people of Stockton, and then create a strategy for how to get us to our goal from where we are now. And it's a big part of why she was brought on. And to find somebody with that skill set, who's also a photographer, who's also a videographer, who's also an illustrator, who's also an animator, it's hard. It's really hard. I've been in this industry for a really long time, and I could probably count on one hand the number of people in Northern California that's as good at it as she is. So, but the goal is making sure every resident can access city information regardless of their ability. It's not just like a federal law, it's a core to the mission of that OPTIC team. And transparency means nothing if it's not accessible to everybody.
Definitely. Thank you for going into more detail about what that department is, how it works, and what the goals are. And I'm wondering now, you're talking about, you get direction from the city manager as to what's the approach going to be to various information and pieces of news. So what is your kind of mindset going in? How do you decide what is going to be shared, what's important enough to be shared, and maybe things that you decide, we're not going to share this from our platforms? How do you make those decisions?
Well, there's laws. And a lot of people don't know that there's certain laws about things that we can share through official channels and things that we can't share, which is why we have multiple channels. So some things can be shared in one place, but not in another. And it sounds really weird and wonky, but they're regulations, and we have to abide by those things. But the short answer is, if it affects the residents, then they should know about it, right? So if we're not creating the content and possibly we're sharing. So for example, when the atmospheric river was coming into the valley, we were getting updates from our county office of emergency services. We're not going to recreate that information just so that we can slap a city logo on it. We're just sharing it so that it gets out to the public from the county office of emergency services. We're sharing it to get it out to the public as fast as possible, because timeliness is a key and critical component, especially to emergency communications. So, but if it affects the public, they got to know road closures, public safety updates, new programs, council decisions, community events, job openings, any of those things. Those are important to the public. We want to get it out to them. Anything that impacts how people live, work, move through the city, our default position is transparency. We're never really saying, hey, should we share this? The question that we usually ask is, how do we share this in a way that people can actually understand it and use it? So, you'll start to see that more. I think we posted it when they installed the new Hawk crossing system at Pershing. The first thing we said when that was getting put up was, do people understand how the system works? So we immediately made an instructional video on how that system works, and we posted it everywhere. So same thing with Ask Stockton, same thing with, we're working on one right now. The question is, how do potholes get filled? Like, what's that process look like? So we're shooting video and showing what that process is, from the time the person puts their boots on to the time that pothole is filled in your neighborhood. What does that process look like? And how big of a job it is for a city the size of Stockton, with hundreds of miles of roads that need update and maintenance every single day. So helping people understand the scope of some of that. So increasingly, it's not just about what we share. It's how we share it. Trying to find out where people are, trying to, get the information to them in a way that they can receive it. A press, like for example, a press release might go to like reporters that are then going to do a story on it, but it's not reaching, say, a young person who gets their news from Instagram or TikTok, which is becoming the trend. And council meeting, we broadcast it on channel 97, which is a cable access. But what if they don't have cable? What if they're getting, they're watching all their content on Netflix? How do we get that information to them? So part of my job is figuring out how to meet people where they are in the formats that they actually consume that information.
Very interesting. And so you've shared a little bit about there's certain things you can share. There's important information. If it's impacting someone's day-to-day life, you're definitely sure to get that out there. Information about city council decisions. So I want to now ask, where can people access all of this information? Can you tell us, what are some platforms that they should maybe be tapped into if they're not already?
Sure. The best way is through the city website, stocktonca.gov. We post everything up there. The stuff that, like, if you're looking for that steady stream of things that we're updating on the regular basis, it's our social media accounts. If you go to stocktonca.gov/follow us, you'll see all of that stuff. Please follow the social media accounts. We're not bombarding you with useless information, and we're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to keep you updated on things that are impactful, things that will show you how to start a business, or how to navigate the new Hawk systems, or how to find a job. So with the new lifeguarding content that we're putting up, our city is willing to take young people in our community, which they're having a notoriously hard time finding work. As a teenager, I worked at movie theaters and Dad's Hot Dogs in Lincoln Center. I worked all these as a kid. We're not just providing a job, but we're providing training. They're coming in, they're getting lifeguard certified. My daughter was a lifeguard, and we paid, I want to say $350, $400 for her lifeguard certification so that she could get a job as a lifeguard. The city of Stockton is paying for that so the kids can come in, they learn all the life-saving skills, and they get their certifications, and then they get a job on top of that. So, but all of that information gets shared through our social media accounts and also on GovTV, which is channel 97. But for emergency information, and this is important, so if there's something critical or something happening in Stockton that may negatively impact a family, I recommend everybody, we use something called Everbridge Nixle, and it's to send out emergency alerts, and it'll go to your cell phone based on your zip code. So if we know that, say, there's a fire or a chemical spill or some other sort of horrendous tragedy in an area that's impacted, we can send out an alert to everybody who signed up in that area and say, hey, stay indoors, or hey, evacuate. So, and that is all you got to do is text your zip code to 888-777 to receive those mobile alerts. It's free. Everyone should sign up. I'm signed up because when seconds matter during an emergency, you want to get that information directly and as quickly and efficiently as possible. And
you said 888-777 for that
correct.
one? Okay, thank you.
And, honestly, if you see me out in public, oops, sorry. That was my GoGov vendor, actually, wanting an update. If you see me out in the community, come up and say hi. Let's be honest, I'm a big redheaded guy. I'm kind of hard to miss. I'm not really notorious for blending into a crowd. So I am relatively friendly. So if you want to know what's going on, you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them for you and hear what concerns you have. So just, say hi.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us all these avenues where people can, stay in the know, stay up to date with what's going on over there at the City of Stockton. So now I'd like to ask, what changes have you made since taking over this position, and what are your goals for your time in this role?
So my goals are the city manager's goals. So whoever's in that office is the one who tells me what my goals are. But on a personal level, um, when I came into this role, OPTIC was a brand new idea, and it was something that I thought was really neat that I hadn't seen any other city really do well. And I looked, I searched what other cities were doing. So I thought it's neat that Stockton is on the forefront of this sort of governance transparency drive. Um, so my first year has really been about building the foundation and setting that team up for success. Um, but that means assessing what they need in order to do that job well: video production, graphic digital tools, content creation. You need a lot of things all working together, a lot of tools all working together at the same time in order to tell a city story. Without the right tools and resources, we're not going to succeed. So we've been very thoughtful in identifying what's necessary to produce professional quality content. I've also been working closely with our city manager to, like I said before, execute his communications plan. Not just reacting to like things as they happen. You never want to be on that reaction sort of footing. You want to be proactive. You want to be out there identifying what information the public needs and addressing it at the time that they need it. So we're not just telling a Stockton story to the public. We're also building the infrastructure for making sure that we're more reactive and proactive. Then also, the ADA accessibility stuff is important to me. That's something that really focused on. We do have a federal deadline that's coming up, so I want to make sure that we're right in line and operating where we need to be. AB 707 is fascinating. If we end up getting into that whole thing, it's going to allow, under the idea of accessibility, we're going to allow, or we're not allowing, we're working to fulfill this obligation under AB 707, but people are going to be able to attend city council meetings remotely.
Awesome.
So it's not just watching it like they do in the live stream now, but maybe if they have public comments, to be able to then speak to council remotely. So these are people that maybe are disabled, they can't get out of the house, or maybe they're far away, or economically they can't get in the car, or they don't want to stay here until 11 o'clock at night. It gives them an opportunity to still be involved in their city governance. So we're working on that, and especially at the new city hall with the new city council chambers, where all the technology is being created so that people are able to engage with the city council digitally. So that's a new development. Personally, I just want the residents to feel like they know what their city is doing and why. And I want Stockton to be known for transparent, accessible, professional communication. And I want to build systems and processes that will outlast me and my time in this role, so that the work continues no matter who's sitting in this chair. And we're all Stocktonians. This isn't just my job. It's not just where, I show up to work every day. I'm also a Stocktonian. So what happens here is important to me. I want the best for my city. I want the best for my family. I'm as invested as anybody else. So that's it.
Very important. Yeah, that's exciting to hear about how city council meetings will become possibly more interactive remotely. I think that's going to be great, because I know right now you have to show up in person really to be heard by everyone else. You can send in an email if you want to make a comment, you can't be there, or you can leave a voicemail, but that's not listened to, out in public. That's listened to by the council members themselves.
Right.
So that would be very interesting. And you've been talking about how you have to go along with the city manager's plan for disseminating information and kind of his vision for what we should be talking about. Can you share anything about his direction and some of his priorities that relate to your department?
Yeah, he's our new city manager is a really good man, and that's important to me because I think I said yesterday to somebody that as long as I know that that person is doing things for them, I'll bend steel for that person. So it's so when he says he wants to be more proactive about telling Stockton stories, not just responding to media inquiries but actually getting out and telling Stockton, hey, these are the things that are going on. This is what we're doing, um, and shaping that priority. When he wants to explore new channels like podcasts or more storytelling content, that's what we build. Like it's like you tell me the direction, and I'll move Earth, to get there. He's emphasizing transparency, two-way communication with residents, the AD accessibility. All these things are important to him, and they become the lens through which we approach everything. So day-to-day decisions, what's going on social media, how we respond to media inquiries, or that's just my responsibility. I deal with that. But the big picture stuff, the overall philosophy of how the city communicates, that comes from the city manager. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. He reports to the city council. The city council reports to the voters. And so as long as that chain is unbroken, I think the public gets, what they want. And I'm not posting what I think is important. We're going through and making sure, like, is this timely? Is this important? Is this changing the way? Is this opening doors to accessibility? We ask those questions on a lot of these stories. But at the very last question is it engaging? Are we catching eyeballs? Are we, making sure that people find this information? So that's where my experience comes into play. So what I appreciate about our city manager is that he understands the value of clear and honest communication. He sees it as a priority, not an afterthought, which makes my job way easier and way more impactful.
Very, very interesting, and good to hear some of the priorities that you guys have going on over there. Can you share now, how does your work connect with all of the other departments at the city? Would you say that you're operating as a mouthpiece for the full city, through the city manager, or does each department have, another way to disseminate information?
So City of Stockton is a little bit unique. It's kind of nuanced. So I'm the spokesperson on behalf of the city manager's office. He oversees city operations. So when information is coming out, things like Public Works or Parks and Rec, or which Community Services Department, I say Parks and Rec, Community Services Department, so our youth programming, all that kind of stuff. Those are the things that I communicate out to the public. But I'm not the only communications professional at the city, and that's by design, and there's a good reason for it. For example, the police department has their own PIOs and their own communications team. And that's important because what law enforcement has to deal with are unique legal and procedural requirements. They have to navigate those requirements when they're on camera and they're communicating with the public. We all take the same sort of emergency communications training, but there's differences in how we navigate our roles and responsibilities. For me, it's really easy. If somebody asks me a question about an ongoing investigation, I was like, let me forward you over to the police department's public information office. Then they got to deal with how they answer that question. So it's nice. I appreciate that. Because then the things that they have to deal with is they know the things that they can and can't say during an active investigation. For example, things that require specialized expertise and understanding of police procedure, disclosure laws, and then they have to manage their relationship with other law enforcement agencies. So, if we have a situation that happens in the county and people think that it's a city investigation, they have to make sure that they're not getting ahead of their county partners, the sheriff's department, with communications that are going out. So they might defer to the county sheriff's department. And sometimes that causes confusion. As you know, the city has lots of different county pockets. So you might live across the street from somebody who technically lives in a county, even though you're both inside the city limits. But if something happens there, that's being managed by the sheriff's department, not the police department. And then when people have questions and they're saying the police department, they're not giving us information, it's like, well, there's a reason, and that's because that investigation is taking place at the county level. So those are all the different things that they have to navigate that I don't, which I appreciate greatly.
Yes.
And then you have the mayor, and the mayor has her own PIO. And I think that was some confusion when I talk to people, is they think that I'm the PIO for the mayor, and I'm not. She has her own public information officer. His name is Jason Teramoto. And that's because she speaks on behalf of city council, and that's a whole different role and with different responsibilities. So my lane is speaking on behalf of the city manager and communicating the things that he needs communicated out to the public, and as far as the operations of the city government. And most of the time, all those missions align. Like, we're all working towards the same goal. Keeping the public informed on what's going on. We're not really big on secrets. We want everybody to know everything that we can possibly get out. But there are moments when it gets complex, and when different offices have different information, different timelines, different legal considerations. And that's when experience matters. So my job in those situations is to kind of thread the needle a little bit, getting out as much information to the public as we can, while respecting the boundaries that do exist for a good reason, and not stepping ahead of my colleagues who have their own responsibilities in communicating with the residents. But beyond that, I also coordinate with our communication coordinators. Each department in the city has a communication coordinator, a point of contact. So, and the reason is we have departments that do incredibly complex things. They're engineers, and they're building things, and they're doing things. And I don't know if you speak to many engineers, sometimes the stuff they say is like,
yeah, that's true. I don't know.
So part of that is I deal with their department heads or their communication coordinators. It's like, okay, tell me what's going on. And then my job is to convert that into a way that the layperson can understand it. Like, well, we don't need to know how the sausage is made. We just need to know when it goes on sale, that kind of a deal. So, but we're all working to do our best to make sure that the information gets out to all of the city residents.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining the layers of communication that are out there, that there's a whole separate information coming through the City of Stockton Police Department. The mayor has their own public information officer, and then you're representing the city manager. So very, very interesting to hear, how those are connected but separate as well. And my next question is about branding. So what would you say is the current brand perception of the City of Stockton, and how are you guys working to maybe enhance or improve that?
It's funny. My wife is from Southern California. And when we first started dating, I would go down there, and we're meeting her friends, and she went to UOP up here. That's how she ended up in Stockton. And we would go down there, and it's strange. It was strange for me to be down in San Diego, LA, and talk to people and see what they knew about Stockton. And I'm not going to pretend that Stockton hasn't had its challenges. We've had some really tough headlines over the years, and those stories tend to stick in people's heads. And that's the reality that we're working with. We have to kind of unravel that a little bit, because it's frustrating to me that those headlines overshadow everything that's amazing about the city. And there's so much that I think people that even live here don't recognize about Stockton. Like me, when I was a kid, and I'm like, I can't wait to get out. I'm going to go, start my company and make millions of dollars and that kind of stuff. But you don't see the value of what you have until you don't have it. So the biggest thing for me is to remind people of what Stockton really is. Stockton was the center of the gold rush. We were founded literally, 1849, right? The founding of the state. We have the oldest private university in California here in UOP. We're the home of the Filipino and Latino immigrants that helped turn California into an agricultural superpower. all of that started in Stockton. So many global brands. Ghirardelli chocolates started here right up the street, and people don't know that. Caterpillar tractors, Kevin's Foods, all these huge companies started right here in Stockton. Um, and there's a piece of history that I learned from our county historical society, Philip Merlo, that I didn't know, and that was Bank of America technically was founded in San Francisco, but during the fire, they smuggled all the gold into Stockton and hid it in a farm in Stockton. So
Oh, wow.
Bank of America wouldn't exist. So
How cool.
there's all these crazy stories about who Stockton is, as an entity, as a brand, and we're often overlooked. But nothing happened in California that did not come through our ports, that did not drive down our streets. This state was launched from Stockton, and I don't think people give us enough credit for the role that we play in our history as a country, as a state. So I want people to understand that we are unbreakable, we're undeniable, we're unstoppable. We might get knocked down, but we don't stay down, and that's the brand to me. And we always get back up. No matter what you read in the headlines, what happens, with the mortgage crisis and the bankruptcy and all these things, we get back up, and we're always ready to push forward. We're going to fight until we win. That's what Stockton is. We're not just a city of fighters. We're a city of champions. We're champions in the ring. We're champions in business. We overcome and we keep on going. So how am I working to change that perception? Is by telling those stories, getting that information out, by not waiting for national media to tell our story for us, but by showing the residents and the rest of the world who we actually are. Not to give them spin or or some sort of positioning statement or something like that, but just the truth about a city that has always been much more than its worst headlines. That's it. that's my pitch. That's my sermon.
I think it's beautiful. You're so right. We're still here. We're always growing. There's so much going on in our city. It really is thriving. There's people here doing great work too. There's so many nonprofits here. We have so many great assets. And you're right. You're so right about the history. It is really interesting to kind of think back at some of the buildings that we have here and, all the life that has gone on here over the years. It's very, very interesting. So thank you for that. So as the PIO, what are some of the challenges that you're facing and how are you working on solving those?
I think it's pretty much what we just talked about, national media showing up when there's bad news. There's not much you can do when you're playing defense,
No.
and you never want to, when stuff happens and you have Good Morning America and ABC and Fox News and all these people coming into town, and LA Times and the New York Times on I'm dealing with all these people and they want to ask these questions. You don't want to say, yeah, but we also have, this amazing cultural event that's happening up the street, or we have this, this other thing, why aren't you paying attention to that? Because I'm not trying to do damage control. It's really about being honest about the struggles of a city our size and what we're dealing with. So another challenge is the scope of what city government does. We have over a dozen departments that have hundreds of programs, thousands of employees doing important work, and the residents need to know about that. But there's only so many hours in a day and only so much attention that people have. So the challenge becomes prioritization. You have to be able to identify, like in a split second, what's the most important information to get out right now and how to get it out in 90 seconds or less, because people have to go to work and they have to make dinner and they have to take care of their kids and they have to go to sports and they have to, all these different things. So you have to figure out what people need to know You can't communicate everything, so you have to be strategic. It's a challenge that I'm up to, and I love what I do. Um, and I'm trying to think of like something clever to say, but the reality, you know, speed is the challenge. It's information moves fast. Social media doesn't wait. You have
No.
to draft a perfect response to things that are going on, because 24 hours to now, it's an entirely different day. It's an entirely different show. Um, you know, and I think misinformation is probably my biggest challenge. You know, I'll see reports or stories written that are so completely inaccurate, and now you're trying to provide documentation to the reporter, and it's like, hey, there's this, and this that show that that what you said isn't 100% on on path, and but that story's already out. The damage
Yeah.
has been done. The headline's been written, and so you're the expression, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its shoes on. That's what we're dealing with. So that's what we fight every day. But we're working on being faster, being more present, trying to anticipate when those things are happening so that we can get the right information. And it's not that the reporters are trying to misreport things. It's that they're on a deadline. So they're trying to get the information as fast as possible because they want to be relevant. So we're all in a race, but we're all on the same team. It's a weird. It's like high school track. We're all on the same team, but we all want to be the fastest. Um, so part of my job is trying to be present, build trust with the residents, and that way, when they see something questionable or they see something that makes them angry or they react to, their first thought is, well, let me go check the source. Let me go back to the city and see what they're saying. So I want to build that relationship with the public, and I think I have in some of my former iterations. As hopefully I've built a reputation where people know that I'm not going to sugarcoat it for them. But I know that we have to work hard to get that trust, but it's achievable. It's something that I know we can do.
Definitely. That's so interesting to think about. Yeah, you're probably just always, I'm not going to say on edge, but just always kind of anticipating, should I put this out? How quickly can I get this information out there? And it's really interesting because if you have something out, as long as it's the right information, then people can always go to you and say, like, okay, the city said this is the correct information, versus whatever another news channel might have said. But if the city doesn't have something out, then that's all they can go on, So I think that's where your job just becomes so critical, of just having something out there. Like, here's the facts, at least. Very, very cool. Very important. So you touched earlier on something people might be surprised to know about the PIO position. So let's move instead to, what is the most common question that you're asked in your role right now? And how do you answer it?
I think mostly what happens, and this will be family members, friends, they'll see something on a council meeting or they'll see something on the news, and their first thought is, what's really going on? Like, tell me what's really happening. And they want to know the full story. They want to know if there's something that that the news isn't telling them or that the city isn't telling them. They want the scoop. I get it. I've been that person. Especially being in media for as long as I had, we know that every headline is carefully crafted, and sometimes it's as important to see what's not being said as it is being said. And there's almost no accidents in word choice, right? Especially when you're trying to create a narrative or you're trying to push forward an agenda. Because I've worked in PR, and I tell people I've had clients that were in finance during the bankruptcy crisis. So you want to talk about damage control? Like, that was a gnarly time. But you read something, you wonder what's going on behind the scenes. So when somebody asks me that, I give them as much as I can. If I can answer it fully, I do. If there's a reason I can't, like legal restrictions, or there's an ongoing investigation, or it's something that's happening with the police department, or if it's a personnel issue, I'll tell them that too. I can't. That's a personnel issue. Like if somebody quits their job, all I can tell you was the last day they worked, because I don't get involved in sort of those issues, right? That's not my role. That's not what I do. But I'll tell them, I can't discuss that right now because that and that is happening. And sometimes that creates frustration. I mean, I know how I would feel. I know how I did feel when I sat on the Measure A committee and I would ask city staff about things, and they're like, well, I can tell you this, and it's so I get it, but I don't want to give people like the runaround. I want to be able to provide them with truth and accurate information. People can handle being told that there's a boundary, and most of the time, if you say, hey, I can't tell you more than this right now, but as more information comes out, I'll get it to you. And I say the same thing to reporters. So the biggest thing is that the public doesn't want to feel like they're being ignored or lied to, misled.
Yeah.
So we avoid that. The other question I get a lot is some version of like, well, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't I know about this event? Why didn't I know about the tree planting at this park, or this new park got launched, or, a road closure or program? And that's useful to me. I actually take that question as, okay, now what do we need to do where are they getting their information? Like, where can I get that information in front of them? And it just tells me that we have a gap somewhere in our communications workflow. So maybe we communicated it, but not in the right place. Maybe we didn't communicate it early enough. Maybe we didn't, use the channels that they subscribe to. And that kind of thing helps us just get better at what we're doing. So I try to treat every question, even the frustrated ones, as an opportunity. If someone's asking it, that means they care. No one asks questions about things they don't care about. So it's a lot better than apathy. I would much rather answer questions all day than people just be like, oh, that's just the way it is, and walk away, because I can't fix that. I can't make you care. So I'm much happier when people ask questions.
Awesome. Very interesting. And in your role right now, what do you think makes the PIO position so important and just so key for our community?
Well, I think democracy only works when people know what's happening, right? You want them to show up, you want them to vote, you want them to participate in the system, but they have to know the impact. They have to know what's going on and how it impacts their life. That might sound kind of overwhelming, or like I'm, aggrandizing myself or something, but I believe that when residents don't know what their city is doing, when they feel like decisions are being made behind closed doors, when they can't find answers to basic questions, trust breaks down. And once the trust is gone, it's really hard to get back. So my job is to be sort of that bridge between, the city government and the people that it serves, to make sure information is flowing in both directions, that we're listening to the public, and then we're getting them their information that they're requesting. It's not just the city like talking at the residents. And I think I've touched on this bi-directional communication a couple of times, but it really is a motivating goal. At listening and getting them the information that they need to know. But for a city like Stockton, I think this role matters even more because we're getting bigger. You have a small town that has 15,000 residents. You almost don't need a newspaper. Everybody's
True.
at church or at school or whatever. But we're getting 325,000 people in a greater Stockton area of 425. We're going to hit 500,000 people pretty soon. And we've had our challenges, and we've had moments where residents felt like they didn't know what was going on or why decisions were made. So part of rebuilding that trust is showing up consistently and being transparent, even when it's uncomfortable, and proving over time that when we say something, that it's the truth, that it's unimpeachable. So that's important. and I think also speaking to residents who have felt historically left out of the conversation. Um, People who maybe don't speak English as a first language, people who don't have internet access, people who work two jobs and just don't have time to come to a council meeting. I mean, that was me. I was working three jobs. We were talking before this. So I worked 7 days a week, all through my 20s. And, but they deserve to know what's happening in their city too, and as just as much as anyone else. So making sure we reach everyone, not just the people who are already like plugged in, showing up to council meetings, but also getting a hold of that person. Even if the only time they have to get some news is scrolling through their feed, like in the drive-through at Taco Bell, that at least we got them some information so that they can stay tuned in. But at the end of the day, I work for the residents of Stockton, and that's what we all do. We all want you guys to get the information, and I truly believe that, and I take it seriously.
Right. It's so interesting what you're saying, because if the information that the city's putting out is fully accurate, then that, of course, it's building trust with our citizens. It's building that relationship to where they know, well, anything coming out from the city, I know I can rely on, and that's accurate information. And then to your point, it also is interesting how you're right. You're so right. Our community is so large, and people get their news from all different places. And sometimes you think you've done a ton of promotion, and still, you'll get people coming to you a week later asking, well, I never heard of this. Like, I never heard about this event. So it can be really hard to find where people are, but it's really exciting to learn that you guys are trying to go after as many different pockets as you can and as many different platforms as you're able to. So that's amazing. What do you love about being the public information officer for the city manager's office?
I think the thing I love about it most is that it is the intersection of everything I've spent my career building towards. I get to tell Stockton's story every single day. And not to the people who just live here and love Stockton. You preaching to the choir is the expression. I also get to tell the rest of the world, what we're doing. And they might only know Stockton from a headline or a statistic that they heard. So I get to tell these people just a whole different story that they're missing about Stockton. I spent years talking about, wanting to help people see Stockton the way that I see it. This job lets me do that. And I also love the variety. One day I'm meeting with the Emergency Operations Center to coordinate on preparedness. The next day I'm out with the fire department filming, their training sessions and the things that they're doing to make our community safe. The day after that, I'm helping recruit teenagers to become lifeguards. It's fun. It really is a lot of fun. And it can be stressful. Without a doubt, it is a real job. I do show up every day with a stack of things that I got to get done, but it's all stuff I enjoy doing, and it's all things I have experience doing. So, but it's new every single day. It's a new adventure that we're tackling, a new problem, a new fire I got to put out, a new knot I have to unravel. And every day I get to show up for my city and the people who live here, and I love that. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the fact that I get to use both sides of my brain. The communication side, the storytelling, the creative stuff, the messaging, the media relations, but also the technology side, the engineering part of my brain. If there's a problem that needs to be solved, that engineering part kicks in, and we try to find possibly tech solutions to it. Municipal problems, asset reallocation, all the things to help our city to continue to modernize and build efficiencies and make government work better for the residents. But really what I love most is I get to do all of this for my hometown, and I was born here. I built businesses here. I raised my family here. It's not just a job. It's super personal to me, and I tell people all the time, you don't get it until you take your kids to go play in the same parks that you played in when you were 8 years old, so it means a lot.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like you're the perfect fit for this position. Like, it couldn't have gotten better.
I appreciate that.
So what upcoming events or information would you like to share with viewers today?
There's so much. I had to write a list one day because I think the New York Times was in town. They wanted to see some stuff that we were doing. And it was like in a 1 week period, they were here. There's like 25 different things going on. I think that's the challenge, is that a city this size, there's always so much going on that it can be a little bit hard to keep track of. And it's not just like events or things that are happening at the arena, the Fox Theater, or then you have the school things, and then you have all of our nonprofits that are always doing things like tree plantings or cultural enrichment experiences and stuff like that. Um, so for like city events and programs, our economic development department maintains a calendar of like city sponsored events, but also we have like Visit Stockton, which is great. Krista and Robin are amazing. And so they do a lot of, like, when businesses are doing special events. I used to love them when we did St. Patty's Day parties. They would always share that information. ASM, our partners, promote what's happening at the arena and the Fox Theater. Civic partners like you guys, Downtown Stockton Alliance, Miracle Mile Improvement District, they're always putting on events and things that are happening. And so there's all these different things that are going on all the time. But the question always was why we don't have a centralized, like, where can I go to find what's happening in Stockton all the time? So
Yes.
the city manager asked me to start working on creating a citywide calendar of all the things that we're doing. So all of our nonprofit partners, our city partners, our vendor partners, trying to get all of that located into one centralized calendar. So we are working on that, not to compete with what you guys are doing, but honestly to provide you guys with additional information about what the city is doing. So, but the goal is to make it easy for residents to see kind of in one place what the city of Stockton is doing on any given day, whether it's a council meeting or a concert at the waterfront or a festival downtown or some sort of neighborhood event. We're working on that right now. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, again, follow us on social media, stocktonca.gov/follow us, and you'll see updates and events as they're announced.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so excited for that. I am one of those people who has been hoping for some place where we can get, events that are sponsored by the city, but also events that are going on at some of the city venues that maybe the city isn't running them, but they're still at the city locations. So it would be so cool to have a crossover calendar that just has everything on it. Public holidays too, all of that information just in one place. So I'm so excited for that. Let us know when it's launched or getting ready to launch.
I will. I'll keep you updated. That's kind of my job.
Yes. So if a member of the public has something that they would like the City of Stockton to share with their platforms, how can they go about getting that done? So maybe there is a nonprofit, they're hosting an event. What would you recommend to that person?
That's a little tough. So there are regulatory agencies. One things I have to remind folks of all the time is that we operate on taxpayer dollars. So if business X wants to promote the stuff that they're doing, they're posting their stuff all the time, technically that would be taxpayers' dollars being used to promote that business. Mm-hmm. And if there's competitors out there, it'll look like, and it feels like to them, and they're justified in feeling that way, that the city is giving them taxpayer dollar resources. And so we have to avoid that. So right now what we're focused on are all events at city venues that are funded by the city or funded by our state and county partners, taxpayers, nonprofit organizations that we have a relationship with. So we're getting that information put up. I would recommend that private businesses coordinate still with like Visit Stockton and Downtown Stockton Alliance and Miracle Mile and get on their calendars, because we're all kind of working towards the same thing. But we have to be super, super cautious about making sure that everybody is treated fairly and that we're not giving taxpayer funded promotion to one private entity as opposed to somebody else. So it's a weird kind of needle to thread, and it's hard to kind of explain it to people. I think once you do, they get it. But we've had even with other government agencies that I worked at, it was like, hey, can we donate backpacks? And it's like, we can't, because that's taxpayer money, so we can't really just give taxpayer money, in that way. But maybe we can do this, provide a venue for that event that, at a discounted rate or whatever it is, so that it's still a community benefit, but we're not doing anything inappropriate. So it's that kind of thing. So we'll, we want everybody to know what's happening in Stockton, every weekend or during the week. And you should be able to go to one place and find out. And we're not there yet, but that's where we're headed.
Very, very interesting to explain kind of the nuance. And yeah, I'm excited about the direction that you're headed in. So on the flip side, if a member of the public just feels like they have something that they would like to communicate to your office or the city manager's office, how can they do that?
Oh, easy peasy, which I can't believe I said that on camera. So, I mean, the easiest way is honestly to, you can email us, you can go through Ask Stockton. It depends on the information that you're trying to convey. So if you just want to email and make sure that it gets to me, you have a question or there's something that you'd like addressed, you can go to communications at stocktonca.gov, and that goes directly to my team. And if you have, say, a pothole or a broken sign or illegal dumping that you want to communicate with the city and you want to get that fixed, Ask Stockton. I can't tell you how many times I talk about Ask Stockton a day. And it even came up in council last night. But the Ask Stockton app, if you have an issue and you're submitting it, what happens, the way that process looks like, and we're actually creating a video to show what that process looks like. It comes in and immediately gets forwarded to the department that handles that situation. So if it's illegal dumping, it goes to the solid waste management at the Public Works Department, then they get it into their system, and then it gets on a schedule, and their team comes out and gets the trash or fix the sign or whatever it is. And then, we'll have people that will post, they go through Ask Stockton, they're like, I can't figure out who's in charge of this. And I'm compassionate because I had the same feeling when I got here. It's like, hey, which department is in charge of this thing? And they're like, oh, that's, municipal utilities. And it's like, oh, it's not public works. I was like, so it can get confusing. So if we also have a miscellaneous, so it's kind of like the catch-all. And there's plenty of people that send on a regular basis that I know personally, and I'm like, why do you send this to miscellaneous? Because those go directly to me. So that's a public works issue, that's a Stockton PD issue, and we kick it over. But it's or / Ask Stockton is the short link to it, if you don't want to remember how to type that whole thing out. But, it's really an amazing tool. And I think the confusion comes, and where people get frustrated, is when that ticket gets submitted from a resident to fix something. Say it's a pothole, and they say, hey, there's a pothole in front of my house. They take a picture of it, they submit it through Ask Stockton, it comes in. When that gets assigned to Public Works and they get it on the calendar to go out and fix that pothole, and that they really do, gets added into the workflow, they'll close out the notification ticket and it becomes a work order ticket. And usually what you'll see is they'll put in a comment saying, hey, this has been put into our system. It will be addressed in the next time we're in your area. And Stockton, again, hundreds of miles of city streets, and they go out and they do areas. Sometimes it's one truck, sometimes it's 4 trucks. It could be 20 people out doing potholes on any given day. But when they see the ticket closed, and then they look out the window and the pothole's still there, they're like, they close the ticket, but it's still there. And then they'll submit it again. And it's like, so what we're doing is we're working to better inform the public on what that process looks like, so they don't feel like they're being ignored. And that's the biggest thing for me, is I don't want anyone to feel like their issues are unimportant or they're being ignored by the city. We do work for them, and we want everybody to feel like they're involved in their city and how it works. So that's the best way to communicate with the city.
Definitely. And I'm a huge advocate of Ask Stockton. I have used it several times myself. It's just so convenient. If you see, hey, there's maybe graffiti on this light pole, or maybe the sidewalk has a huge crack in it that could be really dangerous. Or if you see like a gigantic mattress just on the side of the road somewhere, or just anything like that, it's just such a wonderful tool to communicate, hey, this is happening. And to your point, Tony, anytime I've ever used it, the communication to me was really clear and straightforward, and it had a date range of this will be solved within a week from now or something like that. So I think it's just such a cool tool, and if you've never used it, I highly recommend checking it out, because any citizen can use it. You can use it to help make our city better, which is the whole point. So thank you for touching on us.
I was going to say one last note, for the public to know how seriously we take the Ask Stockton submissions. I think it was like the first month I was here. Something had happened to where because we have to respond within a certain number of days when they come in, and there's a time limit on it, and where it turns red, everything gets angry. And I think I had to take a Friday off, or I was ill or something to that effect. And I came back in on Monday. And so I lost 4 days on the submission.
No.
And it was supposed to go to the police department. I think it was an abandoned vehicle or some sort of code enforcement issue. And the lieutenant who was in charge calls me up. He's like, hey, he goes, I lost 4 days on this, man. Like, you got to send them faster. There is a sense of urgency. And we joked about he's got a mission too, and he wants to get these things resolved, and he has to get them on the schedule. So internally, it's like it's moving through the different departments fast. We're checking it multiple times a day, making sure that things are getting scheduled. It's serious business down here, like how much we look at Ask Stockton requests and make sure that things are being addressed. So I don't want people to think that it's a ticketing system and it sits there forever. No, we're on it all the time.
Yeah, it's just so cool. Yeah, it's not like you just sent an email and it went nowhere and you don't hear about it for months. To your point, it always tells you a time frame. So that's just such a good tool for our community. So awesome job on that one. All right, I've discussed a lot of questions relating to your role as the PIO, and now I just have a few more questions on my side of things related to downtown Stockton specifically. And after that, we'll see if there are any audience questions. So just a reminder, if anyone's watching and you have any questions for Tony and you want to ask them during the live, now's your chance to still type that in. All right, let's dive into some downtown Stockton questions. So Tony, what do you love about downtown Stockton today? And what potential do you see for downtown in the future?
Oh, man. I love that downtown feels like it's waking up. Like I said, I had a business down here. I used to come down here when I was a kid, when K-Joy was on the corner, and see the guy in the DJ booth, and you could hear the music and you could see him talking here. That used to blow my mind when I was a kid. But I walk around downtown all the time now. And we walk to go to lunch down the street. So it's nice to see that sort of evolution of community that's kind of building up out here. Downtown Stockton is unique to me because I have all these memories attached to some of these buildings. Like, I went to a prom at the Civic Auditorium. And then years later, my wife and I went and saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers play at the Civic Auditorium, right? So there's all of these things that flash back, like when I walk through the city or the Civic Auditorium now, that I remember. So I have sort of a unique experience with that. I'm also excited about the future, the momentum that downtown Stockton is taking. We have the USS Lucid that's going to be coming into the port and become like a maritime museum. We're moving into New City Hall. The public facing counters are already open. So now if you want to get a business license or do plan submission or your fire permits and stuff, you get to go into the new City Hall and do that. And that's a whole new system, and it's super nice it's one place. It's sort of a business hub instead of going to the permit center, and then you're going to City Hall, and then you're going to these different places. It's all in one place now. I like so I'm excited for that. We don't get to move. The city manager's office isn't moving until the summertime. I'm excited that Code Stack Academy is going to be moving into their new building up the street. So stacking all those pieces together, there's going to be just more and more people walking around downtown Stockton. There's more opportunity for business development and growth. There's more, and we are looking. Everybody's looking at you. Even at New City Hall, everybody's windows are looking across the Delta at Fremont Street. And all those buildings. So if you think that the entire city is not looking at that and not thinking, what can we do next? Right?
Yes.
I'm telling you, like it's a topic of conversation constantly. So, and we start stacking those pieces together, and then we hear about the things that the mayor's working on, the council's working on, city manager's working on, and we're just like, this is going to be transformative. Like Stockton is going to be something different in the next 5, 10, 20 years, and it's super exciting to see. I suggest any companies that might be considering investing and bringing jobs to Stockton, get in while you can, because things are moving quickly. So that's it. I enjoy. We have lunch. My wife works downtown also, so we'll both walk to one of the local restaurants, and we're at all the local restaurants, and it's great. I enjoy it. I really do enjoy walking around downtown Stockton.
Beautiful. You're so right. We are like ripe with potential. There's so much room for development here. Exciting to hear that you guys are thinking more about that North Shore kind of area. Would love to see something happen over there. And good to know that you walk around to many of the lunch spots. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to give in particular?
We've been going to Misaki for years. Being in the industry, a lot of their staff used to patronize our businesses. So we love them. Fed's great. LaDonya, which is brand new, has been such a go-to spot. Xochimilco's, I think we go to Xochi's probably 3 times a month, maybe 4 times a month, which I need to really kind of chill on. I'm already outgrowing my chair. I have to walk, or I have no excuse whatsoever. But I joke that I probably spend half my paycheck on downtown restaurants right now, but I'm not mad about it. I think the thing right now about downtown is there's really good options. There's great food,
Yes.
Local owners. They're all small local businesses. I don't think there's any chains downtown. Places that have character and history. Sochi's has been around since I was a kid. Same thing with Cancun. My family used to go there when I was little, but every time I try something new and I find another spot, there's a barbecue place that just opened up that I want to go check out. So if you haven't been downtown for a meal in a while, come hungry. You won't be disappointed. Can't recommend it enough.
100%. So many options, like you said. It's hard to not eat out. Last year, I think I spent just many days door dashing to my office or walking to get something just right here. And we have a lot of new restaurants, like you're saying. LaDonya, I love that one. And we have a lot of soul food restaurants now, which is kind of new for our downtown, which is great. Just a lot of options. So thanks, Tony, for those shout outs.
Sure.
You mentioned that the new City Hall is kind of up and running. Some of the departments are there. I would like to ask, when will the finalization be of, all the city departments being transitioned into that new Waterfront Tower?
So what they call Building 2, which is the one that people have access to now, that's full. Departments have already moved in over there. And that was super exciting. Yesterday was the first day. Unfortunately, it was rainy, so we couldn't go do some really cool videos, of people coming in and doing their business. But the other building 1, is starting to be occupied now. So they're unloading furniture, they're building desks and all that kind of stuff. We're moving a lot of the stuff from what we call Historic City Hall, so over there, and we're expecting that the final move will be at the beginning of summer. So by the beginning of summer, we're hoping that the transition will be complete.
Okay, so only a few months away, and that's very exciting. I know that's just something that a lot of us have been waiting for so long. I would love to go inside and see it, see what's been changed, how it's been updated. Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. So I will say the public can keep up. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say the public can kind of keep up on what departments are migrating at stocktonca.gov/new city hall, and we're keeping that updated and so on and so forth. So if they have business to do with the city, like we have people that come to see the mayor or the city manager, they're still coming to historic city hall, but after the summer it will be at new city hall, and we want to be able to keep everybody updated on that. So we'll be updating that page regularly with updates on what that migration looks like.
Thank you. Amazing. And so since we're talking about City Hall, I do want to ask, do you have any information about what might be in store for historic City Hall? I don't want to lose it,
No, I don't think anybody wants to lose it. So, not to get out ahead, there's lots of conversations. I know we have some projects coming up, but I think the overwhelming goal and desire for everybody involved is that we keep this historic building in some way or fashion, whether it turns into a community center or something else. We just don't know right now, but I don't think the city is interested in losing this historic building.
Yeah, if we can keep it, let's try. That's my perspective on it. Thank you. Okay, so this is the end of my questions. If people would like to get in touch with you, Tony, to ask you questions or to communicate anything to you about anything you've talked about today, what's the best way that they can talk to you directly?
Like I said before, communications at stocktonca.gov is the easiest way, because those come straight to me and it's easy to remember. The best thing about that is with emails, I can tend to respond to them mobily and things like that. But and then there's also a document trail. So if at any point they're like, "Hey,
find it.
I emailed you 2 times and you didn't respond," it's like, well, you have proof now. So that's what I always recommend. Just send in an email. You are guaranteed to get a response in some way, manner, or form.
I totally understand that as well. It's way easier to search your inbox. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tony, for answering all of my questions. At this time, I'm just going to check and see if there were any audience questions. Are you ready?
Sure. I'll do my best.
Awesome. Okay. So I see we've got some. All right. We've got some things coming in from YouTube and LinkedIn. The first one is from at KBH95207. This person says, "I'd love to see the city advertise the mayor's roundtable for people with disabilities. What we do, what time we meet, and location." They say, hint, hint, Tony. And this is from someone named Kenneth Huntley. So I'll show it there.
I know Kenneth, and He knows I love the ADA roundtable. We spoke with them, and the stuff that they're doing is super important. I think people estimate the impact that these volunteers have on how it provides access to the rest of the people in Stockton. We had a conversation, and I won't go on too long. I'm sure people are tired of listening to me talk, but we had a conversation about people tend to think of ADA or these types of accessibility issues as a matter of this person has a disability, so we have to make it accessible to them. And they tend to leave out or forget about the people that are temporarily impaired. You know, personally, and this might sound excessive or weird, but when my wife got pregnant, the first thing was, she's like, I'm not having another kid in a house with stairs because getting up and down stairs.
Seriously.
So we started looking for another house that had no stairs. But think about that. You know, you have elderly people that are coming in. We need to take a look at the way that we get in and out of the building. And we need to take a look at people that maybe they're impacted through an illness, the broken arm or a broken leg or diabetes and things like that. Those are still people that have a right to access their government that have a temporary or short-term disability, and we have to accommodate them as well. So that's the cool thing about the ADA roundtables. These are all experts. These are all people that are advocates for folks that are living with these various types of situations, and they all come together. Now, as far as advertising it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is the mayor's ADA roundtable. So I would be outside of the scope of my authority in a way. The mayor's PIO might be able to help with that. I think we might be able to add it to the calendar. But as far as like advertising it, I would have to coordinate with her. I think there might be a way, because the mayor, all the council members have their like coffee hours, and we do promote those. So let me find out what the legal requirements are and make sure that we're not. And a lot of people don't. So I'm gonna some inside baseball. How about this? So FPPC rules are that you can't provide more exposure to any particular elected position using resources, because it could be considered like campaigning.
Interesting.
So when we post coffee hours, for example, if you notice, all the graphics are identical. And that is so that we're not like subconsciously or subliminally trying to sway somebody to vote for this person versus that person. Because think about what a council member or a mayor could do is just have an event every single day and ask the city to just post it. So you just see them constantly. And they're technically would be using taxpayer funds to promote themselves. So we're not allowed to do that. So we have to find a way that serves the public interest in a way that's in alignment with state and federal campaign laws. So, and I don't know if that's too much in the weeds for most people, but those are the kind of things I have to keep into consideration when we start talking about anything that's tied to any particular elected position.
Yeah, it's part of those nuances that you were talking about earlier. You know, what can we actually do legally? What can we promote? So very interesting insight. And thank you for your question, Kenneth. Thanks, Tony, for answering. Okay, I see just a couple comments here. This is from the San Joaquin Lions Club. They're saying, thank you for the skills and passion you bring to making Stockton more accessible for all.
Yeah, love the Lions Club, love the Knights of Columbus, and I think the Lions Club has the Knights for the Blind, the Helen Keller Society, Jennifer Gass. They're all great. They're great people doing great things, and I had the pleasure of doing their walk with them, which they do each year down Pacific Avenue. They're such good people.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lions Club. And we have a comment that says they agree with the San Joaquin Lions Club. Tony has been instrumental with his skills and passion to making Stockton more accessible to all. So it sounds like the work you're doing is really resonating with our community. So that's good.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Okay, and just a couple more comments. This is from Damon Alums. This person says, Tony Finn, glad to see you continuing to do your thing for the city.
I appreciate you, brother. I'm glad watching your career develop as well, my friend.
Beautiful.
He is an
beautiful.
amazing voice actor, and has
Really?
done really, really cool stuff. Yeah, he's done some work for me. We did a teacher appreciation video together, and his voice is like warm butter, man. Let me tell you.
Now I'll have to listen to it. I'll have to look out for your next project, Damon. Thank you. Okay, 2 more. This is from Andy Nguyen, 18. And shout out to the DSA for their recent recertification. Oh, that is true. We've finally passed just a couple weeks ago. So the Downtown Stockton Alliance is officially recertified for 20 years. So glad that process is behind us. Okay. This comment is from Caitlin Son, 7558, and this person says, this was so insightful, so thank you for sharing, Tony.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you, audience members, for your questions and your comments, and thank you, Tony, for your time today. I really appreciate you being here and kind of giving us more insight into what the city can and maybe can't talk about, and also what channels people can use to make sure that they're getting the most accurate, up-to-date information straight from you, straight from your department. So is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out the live?
Oh, just follow the socials and get information. I really want people to be involved, and that starts with getting the information. So I know there's something for everybody, and while everybody can't volunteer because we all have very, very busy lives, the more you stay involved, the more we can help combat, false information about our city. And I think it's when we all kind of pull together and we are all shouting with the same voice that people will start paying attention to what's happening here. And it feels like we're getting ready for the state of the city. And we're having a conversation about what the last 100 years, 150 years for the city, 175 years, I think was our last anniversary, have looked like, and what the next 100, 175 years is going to look like. So it's really neat to kind of be at this crossroads of Stockton. This city hall, where I'm sitting right now, has been here for 100 years. And now we're moving into the new city hall, and I think it's emblematic of the changes that are about to take place. It is a brand new city moving into the next millennium, and Stockton is uniquely positioned to be an absolute leader in this state. And I'm ready for it.
I love that. I love hearing that. It's very exciting. Thank you again, Tony, for your time. And thank you, audience members, for tuning in. I hope you guys learned something. Share the video, please, with anyone who you think might want to learn more about what Tony does, or just more about how to keep up to date about the city of Stockton. And this video has been streaming live at Downtown Stockton, our YouTube channel, as well as LinkedIn, where we are at Downtown Stockton. It looks like our Facebook Live link didn't quite go through, so we're going to have to go back and share it on that platform. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week. So have a great day downtown. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.